Okay, welcome back to another episode of Shadows and Ink podcast. And today our guest is Leigh Kenny, and we will be discussing the fascinating topic of Irish legends. So I'm going to let her introduce herself now, so take it away.
I'm Leigh Kenny. I'm an Irish author of horror. I have released two novels, Cursed and Hush My Darling, and I have appeared in a multitude of anthologies.
Including the Dark Tide 20 anthology by Crystal Lake.
Yes. Which was
And
Urban Legends, which ties very nicely with our theme.
yeah, it does. Okay, so Ireland, of course, is rich in legends and myth, and the tales can be favorite of authors and readers alike. Do you think what's the most prevalent misconception about your culture's folklore? Do you think?
Um, I would probably say the most common misconception in terms of popular myths and legends would be the whole leprechaun thing. Leprechauns aren't a huge thing in Ireland. I know outside of Ireland, it's kind of the first thing people think of. But for us, it's kind of a non-event. It's even though it's seen as synonymous with Irish culture, we seem to play into it for the whole tourism thing, but it does get a bit tedious, I think, when we have such a rich cultural heritage and it's got so many cool legends and stories. It is kind of annoying that the thing that's held on to is that leprechaun thing. But
Yeah.
another one that a lot of people don't seem to realize is Halloween. Obviously, with all of us being horror people, Halloween is like Christmas for us. I suppose, don't they call it that, Christmas for goths? But Halloween originated in Ireland. Um, it's one of those things that it started as a Celtic festival, and when the famine happened and like 2 million plus people emigrated, a lot of them to America, they brought Halloween with them. It was Ihahauna is what we call it. It literally means the night of sound. And obviously back then they believed, because they were a lot more superstitious, that at certain times of the year the veil between worlds was thinner, especially around Halloween time. Sound, sorry, around sound it was thinner because of it being winter, the darker nights, and that's how it all started. Was those Celts wearing masks and stuff, essentially to hide themselves, hide their true identity as humans from any spirits that they might find roaming around, so they wouldn't swap with them essentially, and that they'd get sent back to the wrong realm or whatever. And all of that kind of built over time, and as I say, it spread out and it became like, in Ireland Halloween is still a thing, but not as huge as it is in America. um it's a whole, like, I personally, I'd love to go to America for Halloween because it's just such a whole thing. But even the, like, pumpkins, originally it was turnips, not pumpkins, but when the Irish emigrated they couldn't find turnips and swedes in America, so pumpkins, which were widely available, started to be used for carving instead. And I don't know if many people outside of Ireland have ever carved a turnip, but it's not easy. It's really hard on the wrists. They stink. So pumpkins are definitely, a preferred thing. Um, but yeah, essentially that. Those are my two things. More
Yeah,
people need to know about.
I've carved a few pumpkins in my day, and yeah, they're definitely easier than cutting into a turnip because I've cut a few turnips in my day too. Uh,
Yeah, the only thing I will say is though, the carved turnips are way creepier looking than the pumpkins. Like, the turnips are carved turnips are proper. Like, if anybody hasn't seen one, they should absolutely Google it, because they are nightmare inducing.
yeah, that I could imagine because it would probably be very hard to get, I would think, straight lines, so they'd be very
Oh, I
grotesque.
genuinely don't understand why they made us, like, as a child in Ireland, at some point, usually in school or whatever, they will, carve a turnip just, to try it that once. And I don't know why, like, it's like a form of torture, because it's, they're so difficult to carve. But again, they look good.
Yeah, they do. So, how deeply woven are the myths and legends in modern Irish culture?
Unbelievably so. The way our ancestors would have been superstitious, most modern Irish people will still carry a lot of those traditions and superstitions. It's not as prevalent, obviously, with the age of technology and whatnot, but it's kind of bred all sorts of traditions, superstitions, sayings that are still used pretty regularly. Cutting an X in bread, fresh bread before it's baked to let the fairies out. That would be done without even thinking. It's like an automatic cut the cross in the bread. Farmers still to this day won't touch, like if you find a tree in the middle of a field or a raised mound, it's considered a fairy fort. And a farmer won't touch it. They'll build a little wall around it sometimes to protect it, but they'll mow around it. They'll put animals to graze, but they won't cut down that tree just in case they anger the fairies. There's let me see. Just I'm sure this is one that probably carried around the world too. But New Year's Eve, stroke of midnight, everybody just runs outside and starts banging pots and pans. That started here as a way to ward off evil, but also invite good luck. Um, there's just so many things, like even in our stories and stuff like that, our myths and legends, there's kind of a deeper meaning than the standard fable. Like the Children of Lear, it's one of our most well-known legends. It teaches about family ties and love overcoming everything. The Salmon of Knowledge, another well-known one, it teaches about how wisdom can be found in the most innocuous of places. Tiernan Og, another very famous Irish one. Tiernan Og literally translates to Land of the Young, and it teaches us about the passage of time, the dangers of the pursuit of eternal happiness. And then most of the biggest tourist attractions in Ireland, that I suppose Irish people as well as tourists from outside of Ireland would go to visit, would be very much rooted in legend, like Giant's Causeway up the north. Like I don't know the exact story to that one. I think it's something to do with the giant throwing stuff to get from Scotland to Ireland, Ireland to Scotland. But again, like the Hill of Tara has all that legend and lore. The Cliffs of Moher has a bit of everything. They've got like legends about mermaids there. They've got a witch legend. They've got a ghost legend. They've got, it's like the Cliffs of Moher just said, we want all of it. You know, if you want a particular spooky story or a legend, the Cliffs of Moher probably has it. But
Yeah.
yeah, everything here, like from daily superstitions, as I say, to our tourist attractions, to our stories, it's just everywhere.
Yeah, I'll have to look up the cliffs. I'm not sure I've heard of that one. I mean, I know the
There's, yeah,
Giant's
if
Causeway.
you so many different things attached to the Cliffs of Moher.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, I know the Giant's Causeway and I know that the Hill of Tara, but, yeah, I'll have to look the cliffs up 'cause, that sounds interesting. I don't think I've heard the mermaid one.
Yeah,
So,
well, funny enough, I it's one I only heard recently, and it was only when I was actually looking into, because I wanted to make sure that I was providing accurate, somewhat accurate information. And I seen mermaid, and I was like, hey, hang on a minute. So yeah, witches, mermaids, ghosts, you name it, the cliffs have got it.
okay, so how did you get personally interested in legends? Is it just growing up with them, or was it something else that triggered your interest?
It's kind of hard to be Irish and not become steeped in legends, because it's a small place, but we have a long history and it's a fairly difficult history. And the school system here in Ireland, it's never kind of shied away from teaching us about the past and our history. But famine and occupation by invading forces and stuff, it's fairly heavy subject matter. So they also added a lot of folklore and myths, legends to our history. Like I remember the earliest history lessons I remember in school were things like the Children of Lear and Tiernan Og and stuff. So it's almost like even in the education system, the lines are almost blurred. They trust us enough to know that we can separate fact from fiction, but they also blurred those lines a little bit for us, which almost adds to those myths and legends because it gives them a sense of realism. Um, but I think that like it's just one of those things that it's hard not to like it. I don't think there's anyone out there who isn't kind of entranced by myths and legends. You know what I mean? It's a great way to get to know a culture, including your own.
Yeah, it's interesting how many cultures across the world have similar myths and legends too, which I find very fascinating.
Well, to be fair, when you think about it, even aside from cultures, myths, and legends, even when it comes to things like religion, most of the religions in the world tend to be quite similar too. They tend to use a lot of the same text type stuff, you know, the same stories. I don't know. Maybe it's all aliens.
Maybe it is. Yeah. But yeah, because I mean, I know one particular myth that's a quite prevalent worldwide is the vampire myth. I mean, a lot of cultures have some sort of version
Oh,
of the
we have one
vampire.
of those too.
Yeah. It's interesting though. I was talking to Lee Murray in an interview, and one thing that I found out was that zombies are not universal though, because New Zealand,
No.
yeah, yeah, New Zealand has no zombie legends, so that's interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, because we have one of those too.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's interesting how some are and some aren't.
I wonder, is it because New Zealand is an island? Then again, we're an island too. But I was going to say maybe it's because they're an island, so it's harder for the zombies to get there.
Maybe. Okay, so do you have any pet peeves when it comes to authors writing about Irish legends? Is there something they get wrong that annoys you?
Yeah. So I know there's frequent discourse in the community, in the horror community, and I'm sure in other genres too. There's a lot of talk where, people are at odds about who should be writing what. And I firmly believe anyone should be free to write from any perspective as long as they do it with understanding and with respect. I think when you're writing about a society group or a culture that isn't your own, research as your friend, um, it bugs the life out of me that the majority of the time that other cultures, other people, other societies write about the Irish, they kind of turn us into caricatures. There's a lot of stereotypes used. I've read a few Irish books not written by Irish authors, and the majority I do tend to have to stop reading because if I keep reading the caricature, stereotypical Irish stuff, my eyes will roll right out of my head and out of the house and into the sea, never to be seen again. But at the same time, like I think there's a lot because the Irish obviously immigrated everywhere. So there's this thing of, I mean, there's a bit of us everywhere. There's probably not a country in the world that doesn't have some kind of connection to Ireland. And I think there's this thing too where you get families who have, I suppose, all this lineage that it could be decades since they had family members leave Ireland. And I suppose as stories get passed down and as traditions get passed down, they get watered down, they get changed. So some of them are probably writing from a place of good faith. Like I don't think anybody writes on purpose, I don't think any of them set out to make us stereotypes. I think it's just an unfortunate side effect from this idea that, well, my family heritage is Irish, I have an Irish name, and they kind of have this idea that, well, that makes it okay. If I feel that this is how the Irish are, that's probably how they are, because that's not usually the case. I think speak to Irish people, like we don't all talk like leprechauns, we don't all eat corned beef, we don't all have flaming red hair. But yeah, that wow, apparently
Yeah,
that does bother me.
yeah, I can see
I
that.
hope
I
I
mean,
didn't offend anybody there, but also I'm like, I can't have offended them.
yeah, I mean, because I mean, you talk to the average person who doesn't know much about Ireland, they probably think the Irish accent is the same across the country, but it's not because you guys have different
Yeah,
dialects across different counties, which is
absolutely. Like, there's Irish people here that I don't understand. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. There are, of course, some of those, the tara tara type accents. But like where I am on the East Coast, like obviously to anyone outside of Ireland, I have an Irish accent. To me, I have a non-accent. I would be one of the Irish that don't have an accent. You have down south, it's and like southwest, it's quite heavy, and that's where you get your tara taras and your, top of the morning, even though people don't say that here. But then you get up the north and you've got that mixture of like that, because of the British influence still even there, you've got that mixture of like Irish British twang, the rough discourse of like a Celtic accent, almost like the Scots would have. Over the west you get like, it's not so bad, it's a little more lyrical too, but yeah, we like, there's such huge, even where I am locally, like you could speak to somebody and say, oh, you're from this little town, you're from that little town, because everybody has, there's all these little idiosyncrasies in the way people say things.
yeah, because I mean, like even in Canada, we have dialects and accents across the country. Like Atlantic Canada has a slightly different way of speaking than say Ontario, and Newfoundland has its own accent, which is actually very closely derived from the Irish accent because
See, I told
Newfoundland
you
was
we get everywhere.
Newfoundland was heavily settled by the Irish, so that accent is it's definitely not Irish, but it's sort of an evolution, Canadian
Yeah.
evolution of the original Irish accent.
And you see again, like the way the North here has like that the mix of Irish and British and Scottish influence. There's probably parts of Canada where you have that mix of like French, English, Irish. There's probably a lot of fun accents over there actually.
Yeah, well, even in Nova Scotia, you can have a French accent, say on the Acadian shore, right? You've got little more of a Scottish influenced accent from Cape Breton. You may even have some German influence down on the South Shore because I mean, yeah. So it you can just going across the province, you can get different accents. So it's weird.
So it is kind of like here because
Yeah.
literally there's the town next to me. I can see it from where I'm sitting at my back door, and I could actually see the next town over. They have a different accent to what we have. It wouldn't be anyway noticeable to somebody from outside of our county, but within the county, it's like, you're from here, you're from there, And then I'm just some kind of piebald because I grew up in one place, I live in another. So my accent is just a mishmash of all kinds of things.
Mm. So, as we mentioned, you've delved into the realm of urban legends with Dark Tide 20. So, but have you played with myths and legends in any of your other work?
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to write horror and not end up writing about myths and legends to a degree. So much of horror is based around it, especially creature-based horror. I have written about, especially in my short stories, in my full-length stuff, not so much. But in short stories, I have covered mermaids, vampires, more specific to Ireland, I have done a short story about the Akishka, which is like an Irish variety of a Kelpie. It's like a water horse spirity type thing. It's not a good thing. I more recently I done the Crom Crua for it was a feminine rage story for a charity anthology that's out this month. Crom Crua was like it was a pagan deity associated with the likes of fertility, destruction, natural power. I think there was a bit of cannibalism thrown in there too, a bit of everything. But what I loved about it was that the name translates to the crooked one or the crouching darkness. And as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, like it gave me so much imagery, like the crouching darkness. Who doesn't want to write a story about that? But there's plenty more in in myth and legend and whatnot that it's like begging to be told. So I would imagine there'll be a lot more down the line as well from me, hopefully.
Yeah, and that's an excellent segue into the next question because some myths and legends are definitely built for horror. I mean, like one of my favorites is now, and forgive me this pronunciation because I'm sure I'm going to get it wrong. The Doulahin. The
Yeah,
basically it's the Irish version of
Dulahan,
the
Dulahan,
do Irish
headless
version of the
horseman.
headless horseman. Yeah, but way more scarier than the Washington Irving version. But so, what legends would
Yeah,
you
we
like?
like to make our creatures and our legends super dodgy. So,
Yeah. So, what legends would you like to see given the horror treatment?
mm, well, I'd say the majority of Irish myths and legends are probably well suited to horror, and any of the ones that aren't would take very little alteration. Um, so I don't know, like from the Celtic deities to Stoker, Le Fanu, like I'm writing a story at the minute that's set during the famine. I've always wanted to write something set during the famine because the famine itself was a horror. It doesn't take a whole lot to tweak and expand to turn it into an even bigger horror, I suppose. Um, and there's so many directions you can take, and it's one of those things as well where I feel like somebody from outside of Ireland, it would be very difficult to write a horror based around the famine and do it justice. I think unless you're from here, unless you've it's like it's a weird thing, the famine. It's like it's settled in all of our bones, you know what I mean? Even though it was in the 1800s. Like my family is Irish true and true. Like we've been here through the decades and the centuries. Like both of my parents' lineage is just there's so much Irish. And it's like it gets ingrained in you. And I don't think anyone could do like I feel like I have the option to take it in so many directions. I can make it fun, you know. It doesn't have to be horrific horror. I can take it in so many directions, but I do think it takes that generational understanding to be able to tackle it. But that is definitely the one that I am excited about doing at the moment. The Banshee, like the Banshee, is so underutilized in horror. I just someday I'd like to write something full length with a Banshee as central antagonist. The day hopefully will come. But yeah, I just like, I don't know. I grew up in the countryside here. We I grew up like we believed that the Banshee was real and that was that. You know what I mean? And here, I think outside of Ireland, most people view the Banshee as she's attached to particular families and she's a harbinger of death. But to us, it was a case of sure, she's those things. But also, if you come upon her and she's combing that long hair and you interrupt her, or if she just doesn't like the look of you, like she'll throw her comb at you. And if you pick it up or if you catch it or whatever, that's it, you're done. You've essentially signed your own death warrant. So as a child living in the countryside, when the foxes would scream at night, terrifying, absolutely horrific. It kind of gets into you and it adds that layer of realism again to, I know Ireland is a terribly scary place while also being so safe at the same time. We really don't know how lucky we have it here, but yeah, like the Banshee, she needs to be written about. Maybe I'm the one to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually did write a short story on the Banshee. It was a
Oh
murder
my god.
mystery. It was a murder mystery, and she turned out to be the murderer.
You don't say.
Yeah, no, it was a little bit of tongue in cheek, kind of a humorous story.
I like
And
that though.
yeah, so yeah, it was. I kind of mismatched a lot of legends in that particular story because it was for a charity anthology, so it was kind
That
of more
sounds
light.
fun.
Yeah. So, what are some of the most common superstitions in Ireland? We touched on this a little bit earlier. So, because I know in Nova Scotia here, we still knock on wood, and if a bird hits the window, that means bad luck's coming. So, yeah, there are definite things. So, what are some of the common things in Ireland?
Knocking on wood would be a common one here too. And I think I said this as well when we chatted with Nick and Dan about the Dark Tides novella collection. But obviously, my story is called Knock on Wood, and I originally wanted to call it Touch Wood because that's what we say in Ireland. But the two guys were like, that will not translate well.
No,
So
it won't.
we went with Knock on Wood instead. Honestly, here, if you hear somebody say Touch Wood, it's the same thing. They're literally just, knocking on wood, but touching it instead. But yeah, here, like, there's the obvious. There's walking under ladder. You see, I'm not great at knowing what's Irish and what's global, but I know like some of them are probably like walking under ladders. I think that's pretty global.
Hmm.
I'm sure I heard somewhere that in England, because that was considered bad luck, when people were being hung for their crimes, they actually used to hang them from a ladder. I don't know why. That's the English for you. But yeah, walking on cracks, spitting and saluting magpies. I don't know if that's a thing outside of Ireland.
No, never heard that one before.
Ah,
I mean, the
yeah,
walking
it's
on the cracks, we actually have a little rhyme. It's step on a crack, break your mother's back. So
yikes. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know why it must be like a global thing where we all know not to step on the
but
cracks for one reason or
the
another.
magpie one I've never heard before. So
Yeah, no, it's only for a lot. I'm sure. Have you ever heard the rhyme for that one? The whole one for sorrow, two for joy.
oh yeah,
Two
that
for a girl, three for a boy. Oh, we live by that. Like I mean, even when my son is 4 now, and when I was pregnant with him, I was like, every time I'd see magpies, I'd be looking to see if there was a grouping of 3 or 4 to try and predict if I was going to have a boy or a girl. We really are a superstitious bunch. But yeah, if you see a lone magpie, it's bad luck, one for sorrow. So we either
yeah,
will spit in our hand or we'll salute the magpie.
that's
Just
crows over here.
no, we do it with magpies.
Yeah,
Do
that's
you know I'm actually
interesting.
trying to train crows at the moment?
Yeah, well, crows
So
are very smart, but yeah, it's over here that that particular saying goes for crows and not magpies. I guess because we have more crows and less magpies.
perhaps another thing, I don't know if it's Irish or not, is the whole itchy nose fight thing. Do you guys do that?
Don't think so.
Essentially, if we get an itchy nose, it means there's a fight coming. So if me and you are in the same room and I get an itchy nose, I'll put my hand out and I'll tell you to slap it. So you slap my hand, I slap you back, and that's it. Fight averted.
No,
Look, the
we don't.
balance has been restored. And the
I
same if
haven't heard
you
that one.
have If you have an itchy hand, if it's your right hand, money's coming in. And if it's your left hand, money's going out. So expect an expense coming.
Yeah, my left hand must be very itchy then.
Yeah, I know that feeling. And then there's the whole, which again I think is quite can be quite global. Is if somebody is dying, we tend to open the window before they die to let their spirit escape.
Mm.
It's not good to let the spirit be trapped. God knows who
Yeah.
it'll go into.
I have heard of that one. I'm not sure it's overly common anymore over here, but there are places I think that's still a common superstition.
Yeah, you see, like I say, every like we, it's kind of so deeply ingrained in us that we do the things without like a lot of them, like the magpie thing. Like I don't believe that bad luck will befall me if I don't do it. But it's like muscle memory. As soon as I see a magpie, something in my brain goes, "You better salute," or "You better spit in your hand," or same with the itchy nose thing. Like you hold your hand out, and whoever's with you'll slap your hand, and it's just one of those things.
Yeah, it's like and the knocking on the wood. It's like I still knock on wood. It's like it's
Yeah.
like it's like you want to get lucky, just knock on wood, and it's like and I still have the urge to throw salt over my shoulder, so I
Yeah,
don't do
and the
it
same
anymore.
actually.
Uh,
New shoes on the table. My mother goes crazy if any of us put new shoes on a table or on a surface in general. She's like, "No, take the shoes down. Wear them first." Like, why do you want to put used shoes on a table?
okay, so what are some of the more obscure Irish legends that interest you or that you've heard about?
Um, Again, kind of like the superstitions. I don't really know what's obscure to me versus the rest of the world because we kind of grow up on a steady diet of legend and stuff, so none of it's obscure. If that makes sense, like every little town and village here has its own stories, its own hauntings, mythical figures. More widespread ones would be the Fargurta. It translates to the hungry man. He's fairly harmless in and of himself, but he's supposed to be like a portent. He's our zombie. He's our like zombie like figure. He's emaciated. He's blue skin or gray skin, and apparently when he's seen, it's like famine is coming, hard times, just bad stuff in general. We have the Bartok. That's our vampire, which that literally a Bartok translates to dwarf because why have a regular vampire when you can have a dwarf vampire? He's apparently they reckon that he was Stoker's, inspiration, I suppose, because the stories go back way, way back, like back to the times that Ireland had kings and queens in its provinces rather than a whole island type thing going on. But like he could only be killed with a stake made from yew wood, and if somebody was suspected of being a Vortok, or if they died and it was suspected that it was because of one, they had to be buried upside down so they couldn't crawl back out of the grave and come back into the town and infect other people or kill other people, I suppose. But I don't know how widely known those ones are. But there you go. They're my obscure ones.
Yeah, yeah, no, they're not widely known over on this side of the ocean. So yeah, so some of my favorite legendary tales involve ghosts, like La Llorona and the Tales of the White Lady. So, do you have any Irish ghost stories that you like?
We have a white lady too. I think the white lady must be everywhere.
Yeah, the White
It's
Lady's pretty universal. That one.
Yeah. Um yeah, we have a lot. It seems like every castle, stately home, building in general in Ireland has a ghost attached. We have red ladies, we have white ladies, we have faceless ladies, we have devils. The town where I am currently living, there's a like an old jail. It's billed as the historic jail. I couldn't tell you when it was first built or anything, but it was used to like house prisoners during the wars, during the famine. A lot of people ended up in prisons because they couldn't afford to pay rent, stole food, whatever. But it's supposedly one of the most haunted buildings in Ireland, which, to be fair to them, Ireland is pretty haunted, so that's quite the accolade to have. But they do historical tours, but they also do these ghost tours. I've actually never done one, and I really need to because apparently like they give you a VR headset and it's all interactive and stuff. But then I have one of it'd be fairly well known. The location, Glendalough, it'd be very popular with tourists. That's like 15 minutes away from me, maybe 20. And it has like the big round towers that were, it was back, the monks used to use them, like the door was way up high. The monks used to use them to like stay safe when the Vikings were raiding. And one of the most complete ones left is in Glendalough, which close enough to me. And that again, that area, the like, there's a white lady there. I think they might have a red lady too, and monks, apparently ghostly monks, who are still trying to protect their stuff from the ghostly Vikings or something. I don't actually think there's Viking ghosts, but there's supposedly monk ghosts.
Yeah.
Ghosts
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, we actually have a Viking ghost, well, a Viking ship.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Newfoundland. There's supposedly a Viking ship haunting the coast of Newfoundland. So yeah, that's fun. Um, yeah, and our ghost walks don't have VR headsets. We just have reenactors.
Well, now don't quote me on that because I actually don't. I know they have something. They have some kind of interactive thing, and I'm almost sure it's like a headset, and they have like the ghosts going around. I'm gonna have to do it. I'll do it, and like we'll reconvene next year, and I'll let you know what it was like.
Okay, so is there a legend or a myth you'd like to incorporate into your writing, but you haven't yet?
The banshee, as I said, I think the banshee is one that is just begging to be used. That's about the size of it. Yeah, like there's so many to choose from. So again, I think it'd be the banshee, but also I'm writing the famine one at the minute. But again, the famine has so many directions that you could go in. My famine story at the moment is more human monsters, but I think there's scope for all kinds of supernaturalness.
Mm. So why do you think ancient myth and legend resonates with readers? Why do you think the stories of supernatural creatures and gods fascinate us?
I think it's a way for us to tap into our roots, to be close to our heritage. It's fun, it's interesting, it's a way to explore the cultures from a more organic perspective. I think to know what scares people, what shapes their traditions and superstitions, is to really learn about a nation. Um, I think I have found anyway, and now maybe I'm biased because I'm Irish, but I have found in any of my reading, stuff like that, that cultures that have been historically repressed, colonized, whatnot, they tend to have more legends and lore that revolve around need. Whereas colonizers, repressors, historically, I've found a lot of their legends tend to revolve around the consequences of greed and disrespect. And I think that probably shines a light really on how we come to create these myths and legends, I suppose. There's always a lesson in them. And I think that people enjoy them because, like, simpler times, you know what I mean? Um, Life is a lot now. Everything is fast. Everything is technological. Everything is pretty bad for the environment. And I think on some level, people kind of crave ancient forests, stories around a fire, the sense of community. It's like it's better to be scared of the idea of creatures that lurk than to be scared of the downfall of civilization that's like slowly happening before our eyes. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah,
there's safety in it, and there's some kind of comfort in, as I say, that slower pace of how things were.
and definitely. So as a reader, what appeals to you about myths and legends?
All the same things, I suppose. As that, it's escapism. It's a way to learn about new places, people, cultures. It's, you see, I always approach my how I read. It's kind of in tandem with how I write as well. So for me, everything is research. Everything is, it's just it's how I can build upon that in my own writing, in my own stories. It's always fun to come across a new legend or a new piece of information that you can maybe expand upon yourself and make it into something completely new, because that is the thing with myths and legends, is that they are constantly evolving, constantly changing. The myths and legends we know now are probably nothing like the myths and legends that they originally started, that original kernel of something. Like, I think it's the fluidity, much like urban legends. as we talked about before, it's the same thing. It's everybody knows them. There's so much familiarity in them, but there's also so much flexibility.
Yeah, definitely. You can use them in so many ways, especially as a writer.
Yeah,
So
especially in horror.
yeah, especially in horror. So what are some of your favorite books involving legends and myths?
Um, there's so many. Even in school, like a lot of our school textbooks would have been really interesting. For me personally, it's not even an Irish book or Irish centric book, Grimm's fairy tales, which to be fair, fairy tales are in and of themselves a kind of myth and legend because they tend to breed from the same places, from the same kernels of stories. And Grimm's fairy tales, that was my, when the other little girls were reading their nice princesses, I was like, tell me more about Cinderella's stepsisters slicing off their heels to fit the shoe, Mom. It was fun.
Yeah, I actually did a fairy tale retelling last year and or the year before, and somewhere around 2023. But and I did Red Riding Hood version, only I said it in Ireland with the Morrigan.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I was doing some research and I read that one of the Morrigan's more lesser known forms was a wolf. So I used her as the wolf in the Red Riding story.
Oh, nice. You could have called it on Colleen Darragh.
Yeah, I believe just called it Red Wolf is what I called it.
Oh, I'm trying to think now. What's wolf? Wolf is coo. No, coo is hound. I'm not ideal with. They teach us
Yeah.
Irish from like from the age of 4 up until the age of 18 here, but it's taught in school and it's not taught in a particularly child friendly way. So we all hate it. And then we become adults and we're like, damn it, we're losing our heritage. And my son, my youngest, is starting an Irish language school next year. So I've started rekindling. So there's some of the language that I'm like really familiar with, and there's other silly little words that just completely escape me, like wolf.
Yeah.
I can't remember wolf.
Yeah, I am not fluent enough to have named it in the Irish. So yeah, I just went with the English.
Yeah,
So
no, it's easier.
yeah, I mean, I've dabbled a little bit to get a slight understanding when I'm doing the research, but yeah, your language is beautiful, but boggles my brain, I tell you.
Yeah, the only reason it doesn't boggle mine is because when you grow up, but even here,
Yeah.
like all of our road signs and stuff have like dual language. They have the English and the Irish, and it's once you kind of start to learn it, it is very like it's very straightforward. Like there's a town close to me called Greystones, and the literal translation is Nacluhalia, which is Cluha is stones, Leah is grey. So it's literally translates direct to Greystones.
Okay, so what's your next project? Do you have any book secrets that you want to tease the audience with?
I have 101 things on the go at the moment. I'm going through. I'm struggling at the moment with like balancing writing and not writing. So I have a few short stories to finish before I focus on my own projects. I have a couple of sequels then that I intend to write. I have a couple of short story collections because my problem is I keep seeing covers I love and then I buy the cover and I am like, hey, everybody, guess what? I'm going to release this, and then I'm like, now they're waiting on it. I have to write it. So the one I'm most excited for, once I have all those bits and pieces out of the way, I have a story. It's going to be my next standalone, and it's eco zombie horror. I never thought I'd write a zombie horror, but here we are. It's going to be set in Ireland, and it's going to be like a backdrop of rising fascism. It's going to follow a mother trying to navigate a crumbling landscape while protecting her autistic son from those who would seek to harm him, both the living and the undead. And I am kind of using it as well to write out because my son is autistic, so I'm using it to write out some of my own experiences because it's eye-opening to see something from a new perspective. And to be fair, I have learned a huge amount since being parent to a neurodivergent child. It's amazing. I didn't see enough of the world before. I love how he is opening my eyes to seeing things from other perspectives. It's tough, but it's amazing, and I want to pour some of that experience into writing as well. And I think parenting is hard enough. It's harder when your child faces so many challenges. And I think there's going to be a lot of parents out there and parents who read horror who will appreciate, I suppose, seeing that perspective on paper. It's too easy. I think now it's very easy to find like outright difficulties or outright straight, challenging stories where everything prevail, all is good. It runs in a straight line like an arrow. Whereas that's not how life goes, and I think some people want to see that kind of realism. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it sounds like we have a lot to look forward to from you. And I think we'll wrap the episode up here. And thank you for being a guest. It was a pleasure chatting with you. And we could probably talk a few more hours on this subject, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Okay. And that's it for this episode of the Shadows and Ink podcast. Bye for now.